Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name's Don Arleth, and you're watching Midday Report, coming to you live from Warsaw. Hungary and Slovakia say oil supplies via the Druzhba pipeline could be suspended for at least 5 days following the latest attack on a pumping facility in Russia.
Ukraine's military said late on Thursday it had struck the Unetcha oil pumping station in Russia's western Bryansk region. The commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, Robert Brovdy, posted video showing a large fire at a facility with numerous fuel tanks. The Hungarian and Slovakian foreign ministers have written to the European Commission, calling for their oil supplies to be guaranteed.
The Ukraine-based Stratcom Center, which fights disinformation, has backed Poland's foreign minister, Radosław Sikorski, over social media comments directed at his Hungarian counterpart, Peter Szijjártó.
The Stratcom Center, which was established to tackle Russian disinformation, has taken sides in an online commentary between the foreign ministers of Poland and Hungary. It posted on Friday that the economic growth comparison between Poland and Hungary since escaping Moscow's grip makes Orban's kleptocratic choice even more ludicrous. Since 1990, Hungary's GDP has risen 615%. Poland's GDP has risen 1,285%. Poland chose democracy and Europe. Orban chooses Moscow. It comes after Hungary's top diplomat posted on X in the wake of a Ukrainian attack on the Druzhba pipeline, which halted Russian oil deliveries to his country. He wrote, "This is a clear attack on our energy security and another attempt to drag us into the war. It will not succeed. We stand for peace and our national interests." Sikorski had replied, "Peter, you have as much solidarity from us as we have from you."
Firefighters on Friday continued to battle a blaze in Ukraine's Zakarpattia region, which broke out after a Russian missile strike on the area the day before.
As many as 54 firefighters were on the scene working to put out the fire and deal with the aftermath of the strike. At least 21 people were injured when Russia struck Mukachevo on Thursday. The city, which is located some 35 kilometers from Ukraine's border with Hungary, has rarely been targeted by Russian attacks since the start of the war.
The number of Russian sabotage operations against the West has increased 4 times over the last 2 years, and this year it continues to rise. Russian drones have repeatedly breached NATO airspace, most recently here in Poland, where forensic examination of UAV crash site has just been completed. NATO headquarters in Brussels has been informed of the incident, though authorities in Poland stress that it does not trigger Article 5 procedures. Our defense correspondent, Zuzana Jurek, has all the details.
The night of August 20th, when a suspected Shahed-type drone exploded over the Polish territory, igniting the sky in the eastern town of Oshiny. In the immediate investigation that followed, the Polish prosecutor's office revealed that the Russian drone most likely entered the country's airspace around midnight after it crossed the Polish-Belarusian border. Although the cause of the explosion is still being investigated, experts are speculating on 2 likely scenarios.
This drone could fall into our airspace as a result of disruption of its navigation system by the means of Ukrainian electronic warfare. But also it could have been sent intentionally by Russia.
The Polish defense minister was quick to point out that this is neither an isolated case nor an accident.
Drones have ended up in Romania, Moldova, Lithuania, Latvia and Bulgaria, and now for the first time in Poland. We are talking about at least a dozen drones here. They were all intended to end up in Ukraine. This is how Russian provocations work.
Polish President Karol Nawrocki pledged that the security services would remain on high alert.
I assure you that the head of the National Security Bureau is in constant contact with the Minister of National Defense. The National Security Bureau is monitoring the entire matter, and we will continue to do so in the President's office in the coming days and weeks.
In response to the incident, Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs gave a letter of protest to the Russian embassy, in which
Poland demands that Russia explain this incident and cease such provocative actions. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, such incidents undermine the credibility of the Russian Federation as a participant in any peace process or activities of the international community.
With security officials also highlighting that the perceived provocation is most likely tied to diplomatic peace efforts to end the war in Ukraine.
In modern hybrid warfare, it is typical to use such direct military action to achieve political goals, especially now when the peace process run by the Trump administration and coalition are willing.
This latest incident comes at a time when international observers are calling out Russia for its record number of sabotage attempts against NATO countries, and Poland isn't the only eastern flank member where drones are an issue. On Thursday, Lithuania announced that it has established a no-fly zone near its border with Belarus until October 1st, in response to drones entering from there, most recently on July 28. NATO's eastern flank has moved to combat airspace violations, floating Baltic Drone War Initiative in February. The idea is to implement multi-layer counter-drone defenses, mobile and fixed anti-drone platforms to fortify the land and aerial borders of the eastern flank. The concept is still in its infancy. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, French President Emmanuel Macron, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz will visit Moldova next week. The purpose of their visit is to celebrate Moldova's Independence Day. During their visit, the three leaders will reaffirm their full support for Moldova's security, sovereignty, and European path, the French president's office said in a statement on Friday. The official trip of Tusk, Macron, and Merz will take place on August 27th. Moldova will hold parliamentary elections on September 28th. The country's ruling Action and Solidarity Party is seeking to maintain its majority and continue its pro-European path. U.S. President Donald Trump says the next 2 weeks could be decisive for peace in Ukraine. But if talks stall, he's hinting at a shift in strategy.
In an interview on the Todd Starnes show on Thursday, President Trump said it should soon be clear whether progress can be made toward ending the war in Ukraine. He added that if no deal is reached, different tactics may be necessary, though he did not elaborate. The comments come after Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, which ended without a formal agreement, but with claims of great progress. Trump has since spoken with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and European leaders and says a trilateral meeting may be next.
A former Polish defense minister and 3 other officials have been indicted for the publication of a military defense strategy ahead of the 2023 parliamentary elections. Prosecutors say that sensitive information was made public for political gains. According to the prosecutor, Mariusz Błaszczak abused his position as defense minister in the previous government by making public a defense plan from 2011. 3 other officials were indicted, including the current head of the Presidential National Security Bureau. The plan suggested that in case of invasion from the east, the Polish army would take up defensive position along the Vistula River. Błaszczak's party, Law and Justice, claimed that this would mean giving up almost half of Poland's territory and pointed to their political opponents for crafting it. Błaszczak, who is now the caucus leader of Law and Justice in Parliament, wrote on social media that he sees an indictment as an act of revenge from the current government. Serbian police and pro-government media have circulated an anonymous video online reportedly showing prisoners being held in what appears to be a gym. Anti-government activists also shared the video to expose the police brutality and government intimidation.
The video was reportedly shot at a police station in Novi Sad on August 15th. It shows young men held on their knees with their faces to the walls while being overseen by police officers in their gear. The exact origin of the video is unknown, but it was going viral on Serbian-language social media the entire week. A pro-government TV program showed the footage and said that Serbians need to see it so that they, quote, understand what happens when you break the law. Earlier this week, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić announced a harsh government response starting Friday.
Football club Rakov Częstochowa has been fined a total of €40,000 by UEFA. $30,000 for fans lighting flares and $10,000 for displaying a banner deemed inappropriate for a sporting event. The banner, written in Polish, accused Israel of committing violence in Gaza.
Meanwhile, UEFA opened a disciplinary case against Maccabi Haifa after its fans displayed a banner reading "Murderers since 1939" during the second leg match in Debrecen, Hungary. The slogan sparked outrage in Poland and Israel, with officials calling it a distortion of history and an insult to Holocaust victims. Both clubs have been charged with transmitting a message not fit for a sports event. UEFA's disciplinary panel will decide on further sanctions, which could include fines or stadium bans. Rakov's request to exclude Maccabi from future competitions is still under review.
Now down to the Middle East, where the United Nations has officially declared that parts of Gaza have been hit by famine. The organization also warns that it could soon spread to other areas.
The Food Security Phase Classification of the United Nations reports that over 500,000 people in Gaza are affected by the famine. Widespread starvation, destitution, and deaths are now part of daily life in the war-torn area, and added that these have been artificially introduced. In a statement, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk has said that artificially induced famine could constitute a war crime by Israel.
States will take part in Intervision, the Russian version of the Eurovision Song Contest this year. Brandon Howard, who's had a striking resemblance to Michael Jackson, has been chosen to represent Washington in the contest.
Brandon Howard has been the subject of speculation that he's indeed Michael Jackson's son. But there's no evidence to support the claims, and Howard himself, his mother, and the Jackson family have all denied the paternity allegations. Announcing his participation in the contest, the Intervision organizers said Howard's music transcends borders and unites cultures. Intervision, the Soviet-era alternative to Eurovision, was held between 1965 and 1980 in communist Czechoslovakia. Russian President Vladimir Putin brought it back to life in 2025 after Russia was kicked out of Eurovision following its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The Russian version of the Eurovision Song Contest will be held in Moscow in September.
NATO's Secretary General has gone on a surprise visit to Kyiv, where he is expected to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Затягнути цей період часу малювання архітектури цих гарантій чи щось інше. And also I have the same question for you. How will these future security guarantees differ from the Budapest memorandum, which did not protect us from the Russian invasion? Which enforceable mechanism it have to include to make them real? Thank you so much.
Shall I start with the second question? Yes. Well, let's first agree the importance of the fact that Ukraine, the United States, and Europe are working together. And when we talk about security guarantees, let's also agree that there are two layers. Layer number one will be after a peace deal / a long-term ceasefire, or a combination of the two. The first layer has to be for the Ukrainian armed forces to be as strong as possible to defend this proud country and nation going forward. And the second layer has to be the security guarantees provided by Europe and the United States. And that's what we are working on. And as we all know, the Budapest Memorandum and Minsk did not provide those security guarantees. So we clearly know what it should not be. And we are now working together, Ukraine, the Europeans, the United States, to make sure that the security guarantees are of such a level that Vladimir Putin, sitting in Moscow, will never, ever try to attack Ukraine again.
Дякую за запитання. Передусім, дійсно працюють і щодня є відеозустрічі, і вони є на тих рівнях, про які я сказав. і є на рівні командування військового, і є відео і аудіо зустрічі, тому що наше командування знаходиться на фронті. Вони обговорюють структуру і інфраструктуру, як це може бути. Окремі зустрічі йдуть на політичних і безпекових радниках. Європа і Америка всі разом, як я сказав в стейтменті, це факт. Це початок великої роботи, це дуже непросто, тому що гарантії складаються з того, що партнери можуть дати Україні, а також з того, яка повинна бути в Україні армія. І де нам брати можливості, щоб армія зберігала свою силу. Наприклад, коли ми говоримо, я просто на одному прикладі поясню, як це непросто. Коли ми говоримо з вами про літаки, наприклад, про літаки F-16. Ми дуже вдячні всім партнерам і за координацію, і за те, що у нас є такий повітряний флот, або початок. Так, він ще повністю, ми не маємо всіх тих літаків, які нам потрібні. Але ми знаємо, що це літаки, їх не вистачить, щоб гарантувати нам безпеку в небі. Є та кількість, яка нам потрібна. Я поки що не готовий про це говорити. Але потрібно, щоб ми всі були на одному боці, щоб партнери так само розділяли. І вони розділяють, в принципі, ту присутність, яка нам потрібна, який повітряний флот нам потрібен. На все це потрібно, окрім політичної волі, що номер один, а окрім можливості виробника, це номер два, тому що ви хочете отримати реальну допомогу, а не через 20 років, коли це буде вироблено. І це значить, хтось вам повинен уступити в черзі, тощо, хтось повинен передати більш нові літаки, тобто складний. А ще плюс до цього, хто це буде фінансувати. Це також дуже складний процес. І тому, коли ми говоримо про гарантії безпеки, все непросто через ось такі деталі. Зрозуміло, що всі ці деталі проговорюються, всі ці деталі важливі. Тому працюють над гарантіями безпеки. Важливо, що всі дали політичну волю, що ми будемо разом. Тепер, що стосується другої частини вашого питання щодо російської сторони. Як сказав зараз Марк, абсолютно, і ми всі на одному боці. Гарантії безпеки Україні потрібні для того, щоб чітко ми з вами, наші діти, онуки знали, що Росія на нас не нападе. Це гарантії безпеки проти агресора. Чи заради української безпеки, нашого суверенітету, нашої територіальної цілісності. Бо агресор – Росія. Коли Росія підіймає питання щодо гарантій безпеки, я, чесно кажучи, поки що не знаю, хто їм загрожує. Вони на нас напали, і вони на нашій стороні. І я не зовсім розумію, які гарантії потрібні агресору. Гарантії чого? Тому для мене це поки що не зрозуміло, в чому зміст реальний. Я думаю, що партнери в Європі хочуть, щоб війна не повторювалася. А єдиний тригер цьому – це Росія. Окей?
Франс Прес, будь ласка.
Дякую. Daria, Agence France Press. My first question for the Secretary General. In continuing the topic of security guarantees, whether or not you discuss the actual foot on the ground and deployment of the troops. І друге питання, також продовжуючи до пана президента. Чи ви вважаєте, що ці Article 5-like гарантії, вони будуть ефективними без відправки контингенту, without foot on the ground? Дякую дуже. Thank you.
As President Zelensky already said, these discussions are now ongoing at many levels. So the security advisors are working together, the foreign ministers are working together on this. Ukraine is heavily involved through both Andris, both the security advisor and the foreign minister. And the same for the European countries and the United States. So we're really working together on this. And it is too early to exactly say what will be the outcome. But clearly the US will be involved. Clearly we do not want to repeat of the Budapest Memorandum or the Minsk agreement. These security guarantees should be holding. And as I said, as a second layer on top of building the Ukrainian armed forces after the war, moving forward, and NATO will be heavily involved there. We are already, of course, heavily involved through our command in Wiesbaden, which is helping Ukraine to stay in the fight now, but also to help Ukraine to develop its armed forces as a sovereign, proud nation going forward after a peace deal. So NATO is proudly involved in all of that.